welcome back to the channel. And it occurred to me that it's been a little while since I spoke about The Lord of the Rings on the channel. And that's quite strange because it's quite a beloved franchise. It's quite a favourite fantasy book of mine. And I wanted to really review the Deluxe Edition of The Lord of the Rings and give you some buying advice. But before I introduce the Deluxe Edition of Lord of the Rings, I thought it really important to give you an overview of your purchasing options when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Other than maybe some religious texts, it is one of the most widely available novels. There have been so many reprints and editions. It can be purchased for quite a cheap price. Even though these are beloved books in many people's collections, due to its widespread release, The Lord of the Rings is fairly easy to obtain. I would say if you were buying the books individually used, you're probably going to pay £5 to £6 for fairly nice condition paperbacks. And if you were to buy them new in kind of separate volumes, they still retail at, your Barnes and Nobles or your Waterstones at kind of about £11 or £12 per book. So, maybe £35, maybe $40 to buy them all in separate volumes. But most people tend to buy them in either a bind up or as the 3 volumes in a small box set. I will put a few images up of some of those buying options for you. Those tend to retail at around $25 to $30 or pounds, thereabouts. So that's certainly probably the way that they are most widely purchased. In fact, Amazon has got those new The Rings of Power covers for those now. So I'm sure if you're reading e-copies, that's probably the cover you're going to get for those. But what I would recommend if you're going with a physical copy is probably, if you're going to spend a little bit more, get a hardback 1-volume edition. For me personally, I still think of it as a single book. That's the way it was intended, and I think it's the way it works best. I really like the 2 editions that were released in 1991 by HarperCollins. This is the first one. This is the non-illustrated edition. It is a single volume set. Very nice cover. No internal illustrations to speak of. No place-holding ribbon. It's kind of a non-frills single bind up, but I really enjoy the aesthetics, the presentation overall. It's the one I have most nostalgia for. It was the first copy I ever really remember seeing on the shelves new. Next up, they also released in the same year the illustrated edition, much larger. I'll actually put them side by side here. Yeah, so that's actually side by side. The illustrated edition is massive. I would say it represents the best reading experience at this time. The font is of easier to read nature because obviously the page size has been increased. It has several illustrations in it. It has a place-holding ribbon, as most deluxe editions would. It can be purchased for a few pounds more than the other one. I think you can probably pick up the standard edition for £8 to £10, maybe $12 to $15. Expect to pay more like $15 to $18 for the illustrated edition, but again, very affordable, very good, high quality read. I'll actually show you one of the illustrations from inside here. Give you an example. Here's an image of Minas Tirith there. Really big pages, really nice scale to some of these illustrations. And I think that's a really affordable purchasing option. Consider that compared to buying the volumes new, maybe with those Amazon covers on them. If you're going to buy physical, I would go second hand at this point, unless you're going to go for one of the special editions. And that's what we're here for today. I'm going to show you next the author's illustrated edition. So first up, kind of a mini review of the author's illustrated edition. It comes in a presentation box with the enchanted door of Moria on the front. Quite a nice touch. Once inside the box, we have this. As you can see, it's got like a step back dust cover. You've got the Eye of Sauron shining through there. It's got a very similar presentation to that 1991 edition, which I really appreciate. Yeah, it's got the sprayed edges with Elvish on only one side this time, but still very nice. It does have a place-keeping ribbon, similar to the Silmarillion. This is in nice shiny silver. Really nice touch. I'll find you an example of an image illustrated by the author. All of these were Tolkien's illustrations. Here's an illustration from Return of the King there. That has inspired many versions of the release of that book. As with the Silmarillion, you also get some feelies. Here we have a nice map here. That's Gondor and Rohan. So you've got the Gap of Rohan there. Very nice indeed. Nice to have maps, I think. And on the other side, just like the Silmarillion, is a second map. Here we go. Much larger, covering more of Middle-earth there. Lots of illustrations. I think there's about a dozen illustrations in here in total. Here is another one. It's a Rivendell image there. Nice watercolour by the author. Yeah, so how much is this going to set you back? This copy cost me about £40 to £45. It's usually available, I think the RRP on this is actually £60 or about $70, but mostly it's available for about $50 to $60 or £45 to £50. Yeah, I would recommend this if you've got that much money available to you. I do really appreciate the original author's illustrations. I think it's a really, really pretty edition of the book. It has a similar build quality to those ones I was showing you earlier though, so you are paying extra for the author's illustrations and for having a newer copy, but I would say the build quality is no different than those 1991 HarperCollins releases. Next up, the reason we're here today is to talk about the Deluxe Edition of Lord of the Rings. This is a very expensive edition in comparison. It comes in a presentation box with a wraparound map of Middle-earth there. Again, you've got Rovanion, you've got Mordor in there, you've got Rudar, you've got Angmar, or Arnor, depending on what era you're in, I suppose. Let's just pop this open. Now, the Deluxe Edition is going to cost, it's going to cost you probably around £100 or $125. It does actually recommend a retail price for this is actually much more than that, but it is kind of more affordable these days, I would say, but effectively twice as much as the Illustrated Edition. But what you're getting is a Folio Society slipcover, leather-bound spine with cloth, a step-back Eye of Sauron there. Pop it out, beautiful naked hardcover, as you can see, fantastic gilded edges there. You have a red place holding ribbon. Now you have these same illustrations inside. Paper quality, not too much better, slightly, but not too much. But the overall rugged build quality has improved in this edition for sure. It's going to last much longer. 2 additional feelies in this. You get a facsimile of the letter from, this is from Aragorn to Sam, inviting him to back to the kingdom, effectively. This is from the epilogue of Lord of the Rings. You also, the maps are much larger. 2 maps once again, but much larger, better paper quality here, much larger maps that you get with these. You also get some images within this envelope here, leaves from the book of Mazarbul. So those are additional feelies you get in here as well, but you're paying a lot more. Would I say it's worth paying double for this edition? I think that a lot of that depends on whether you intend to keep this throughout your life and maybe pass it on to others. I think the Author Illustrated Edition offers, as far as modern editions go, effectively maybe the best value at this point. You can pick it up for about $50 brand new, and you are going to get a almost identical reading experience as to the Deluxe Edition. It will not survive in the same way, in my opinion, unless you have a way to preserve it, maybe keeping it in that box, maybe keeping it in an area where it's not going to suffer any kind of damp. But I think this edition here is much more rugged. If you plan to keep this and pass it on to your children or grandchildren, I would say that is when the Deluxe Edition becomes worth it. Now, as for speaking to the quality of Lord of the Rings, let's have a little review of Lord of the Rings to wrap this video up. The Fellowship of the Ring may be, depends on what day you ask me, the best book I've ever read. I could read 1,000 pages on the beautiful slice of life that is the Shire and hear about all of the local gossip and you know, the annoying neighbours of Bilbo and Frodo, and what's going on, you know, locally at Mickle Delving, or, you know, with Longbottom leaf prices, or, you know, I could just, I could live there forever. It captures the British countryside better than just about any book I've ever read, which is crazy because it's not actually set in the British countryside. The characters in this book, I mean, just the elegance of Elrond, half Elven. There's so much to gush about in this book, but it is the epitome of grand epic adventure tales. The second book, The Two Towers, does suffer a little bit from being the middle of what was originally one long works. It is, been extracted out. These have all split into actually 2 books apiece, so it's 6 books theoretically. And there's a lot to like. It's a great book, but it does meander a bit more. It relies more on Tolkien's great prose to pull you through. You won't get as much really engaging, story driving stuff in the middle book, and certainly the siege at Helm's Deep is not like it is in the movies. The Return of the King. I mean, is there a greater showdown of protagonists versus antagonists? I love Sam as the terrifying like elf lord come to reap revenge, on Mordor. I love King Aragorn returned. The sword has been reforged. Prince Imrahil of the Swan Knights of Dol Amroth. But then you've got these great villains, Shelob. You've got the Mouth of Sauron and the Witch King of Angmar. I mean, what 3 terrifying antagonists to kind of throw down the gauntlet in this final book. And there's never been written, in my opinion, a book of more courage, honour, nobility and humanity. This book, it really speaks to the human side of me more than anything I've ever read. And I would like to read a few excerpts from The Lord of the Rings for you now, just to kind of prove my point on how I feel about it. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. That's such a moving dialogue between the two there. And I have a couple more. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be so eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the wise cannot see all ends. Gandalf just dropping the best, advice on people at the most, opportune times. And then finally, and this is probably one of the greatest lines in literature, elves seldom give unguarded advice, for advice is a dangerous gift, even from the wise to the wise, and all courses may run ill. Now, once you've lived on this earth for many decades, it becomes very apparent that you can give advice and you can see it as the perfect advice, and you can give it with the best intentions, but how that advice is used and interpreted can still lead to absolute disaster. And that speaks to the long immortal lives of elves and why they are so guarded, and they don't want to interfere in the lives and the politics and the decisions of the lesser races, because they know the advice that is good for them may not be good for others. For me, Lord of the Rings is the most enjoyment I've had reading a fantasy novel. For me, it is, it's timeless. It's part of my childhood. Yes, there is nostalgia in there, but I really believe it is a book of incredibly high quality. It is actually one of my favourite books of all time. It goes and sits alongside some of the great novels for me. I'd actually give it 5 stars out of 5.